job is not worth doing for what they pay. Cleaning toilets? No. The job is not worth doing for what they pay. It's hard to think of a smaller-minded thing to say about being a Supreme Court justice. And there's only one Supreme Court justice in history who has said that. Those are the words of Clarence Thomas. The job is not worth doing for what they pay. They pay Clarence Thomas $285,400, which is $111,000 more than a United States senator. Clarence Thomas's income alone puts him close to the top 5% of income earners, but his wife's income added to Clarence Thomas's income puts him way into the top 1% of income earners. It makes them millionaires. We don't know exactly what Clarence Thomas's wife's income actually is because of the shady ways that Clarence Thomas treats financial disclosure. But in the past, Mr. and Mrs. Thomas have admitted to her income being over $600,000, and there are indications that she could bring home much, much more than that. There is no definition of Clarence Thomas's income that does not fit the word rich. He and his wife are millionaires, but Clarence Thomas's lifestyle is mega rich. A profile of Clarence Thomas written in the 1980s when a few $100,000 was considered very rich. Reports Clarence Thomas's thinking about money then this way. He says he plans to be rich, says that means more than just a few $100,000 a year. No matter how rich Clarence Thomas's income and his wife's income have made Clarence Thomas, he has used his position at the Supreme Court to experience the life of billionaires. New reporting from ProPublica today shows that Clarence Thomas has taken much more from billionaires than ProPublica has already reported. Today, ProPublica reported that Clarence Thomas has taken at least 38 destination vacations, including a previously unreported voyage on a yacht around the Bahamas, 26 private jet flights, plus an additional 8 by helicopter, a dozen VIP passes to professional and college sporting events, typically perched in the skybox, 2 stays at luxury resorts in Florida and Jamaica, and 1 standing invitation to an uber-exclusive golf club overlooking the Atlantic coast. Former federal judge Jeremy Fogel told ProPublica, "I think it's unprecedented." Don Fox, a former general counsel of the U.S. Office of Government Ethics, told ProPublica that, quote, he advised every new political appointee the same thing. Your wealthy friends are the ones you had before you were appointed. You don't get to acquire any new ones. One of Clarence Thomas's new billionaire friends is David Sokol, who accurately predicted that President Biden's student loan forgiveness plan would be overturned by Clarence Thomas in the Supreme Court. It's going to get overturned by the Supreme Court, Sokol predicted. It turns out a billionaire who never went to law school but flies Clarence Thomas around in private jets can be very good at predicting rulings Clarence Thomas and the Supreme Court are going to make. Joining us now is Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island. He's a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee and chair of the Subcommittee on Federal Courts. He's also the host of the podcast Making the Case. Senator Whitehouse, you promised us it would get worse. It has gotten worse. Does it feel good to be right about these predictions?
No, I wish it did. And I wish I felt this was the bottom of it. I think it's going to continue to get still worse. There's more to disclose about Clarence Thomas. This coming week, Justice Thomas and Justice Alito run out the clock on the extensions for their disclosures. So they have to make those disclosures next week. And there's a 30-day window in which they become public. So we'll find out a lot more from them about their own disclosures, and people will be picking at what they've disclosed and what the press has found out to make sure that they're telling the truth. We may find out new things from their own disclosures as they fear that those things will become exposed in later investigative efforts. And then we're only really beginning to understand how very improper Justice Alito's interview in the Wall Street Journal was. That was deeply improper. And that's going to come out more. So the other Supreme Court justices and the judges on the Judicial Conference need to understand that this is not going away. It's going to continue to get worse because the behavior is inexcusable of their colleagues.
So we keep coming up against no guardrails here. And so just to go back to your point where there is theoretically a deadline that they have to meet for disclosure forms. What if Clarence Thomas just doesn't meet the deadline? I think he believes that nothing can happen to him.
Yeah, I think the problem that he's going to face there is that the Financial Disclosure Committee of the Judicial Conference has those rules. And that's also the group that's going to advise the Judicial Conference on whether or not his failure to file is willful. And if there's a question whether his failure to file is willful, that question is referred to the Attorney General of the United States for a proper investigation. So if you're Clarence Thomas and you are refusing to meet a deadline, you are telling the people who have the position and the power to refer you to the Attorney General of the United States for investigation. I'm blowing you off, pals. That is not a good place to be in because that power of referral to the Attorney General is a power conferred on the Judicial Conference by law.
Okay, so that does feel like something that even Clarence Thomas would be concerned about, the idea that the Justice Department would then be conducting a potentially criminal investigation of him. I do suspect that he would still feel immune from the ultimate effects of such an investigation, but that seems to be the only possible pressure on him.
Well, the Judicial Conference can investigate these matters, and they can amend the rules and tighten things up for the Supreme Court. I frankly hope they will. And they can require more disclosure. But I think a lot of this is going to be on you and me collectively, the press and the Congress, to keep digging to the bottom of this. Because what the Supreme Court justices have told the rest of the world is, we have no rules. We do not care. We will not answer your questions. You can basically go pound sand. And there's no other position in government where you get to do that. Not other judges, not legislators, not members of the executive branch, not town council members in small towns in counties around the country. You just don't get to behave that way as a government official. So the extent to which they're out of line is going to come to haunt them before too long, and we're going to dig to the bottom of it. This is not going to end.
Is it your sense that there is any pressure at all on Clarence Thomas from inside the Supreme Court?
I'm not sure about that. I think that there likely is beginning to be pressure within the Supreme Court. I am confident that there is pressure from within the Judicial Conference. Those judges are the chief judges of all the different circuit courts of appeal and selected district court chief judges, very powerful and august group, and they have to follow the rules. They know perfectly well what the rules are, and they know that the Supreme Court justices are cheating. They know perfectly well that the excuses that are being made make no sense, are not correct, and they also resent that by treating the misbehavior of the Supreme Court justices as legitimate, they impute to the rest of the judiciary that they might be doing the same thing. So I think the pressure is building within the Judicial Conference to take the necessary steps against these relatively rogue Supreme Court justices.
Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, thank you for staying on the case, and thank you for joining us again tonight.